is unique in Canada. We are breaking important new legal ground in legal education. It is a different kind of law school, with a special emphasis on equipping graduates to serve the legal needs of communities in northern and rural Ontario. We focus on admitting students from towns across the north, as well as throughout the rest of Ontario and rural or small town Canada. In addition to the core law courses, torts, civil procedure, etc., the law school has a mandate to teach and focus on three main areas: Aboriginal law and issues related to Aboriginal peoples. Secondly, at establishing a legal practice in a small centre. And thirdly, an emphasis on natural resources, particularly in mining and forestry. Our classes here are small, and the students are given hands-on opportunity to apply law that they learn in class. We place a great emphasis on legal training, including oral and written communication, legal research, drafting, negotiation, etc. Our goal is to equip and develop students with leadership and critical thinking skills and abilities, students who are aware of the social and ethical responsibilities of the legal profession. We are the first law school in Canada to be approved to offer what is called an integrated practice curriculum. Because we teach a variety of practical legal skills, our students will not need to spend a year articling and will be eligible for licensing soon after they graduate. Let me underscore the law school's mandate to Aboriginal law and issues related to Aboriginal peoples. We are striving to be a leader in Canada and indeed in the world with respect to this mandate. All of our students learn about Indigenous legal issues through innovative courses and intercultural learning activities. Importantly, we are committed to admitting and graduating Aboriginal students who will go on to be leaders in their local and provincial and national communities, leaders like our speaker today. So, welcome. Welcome to the Moral Alaskan Faculty of Law, a law school for everyone in this community. My second pleasurable task is to introduce our guest speaker, the Deputy Grand Chief Derek Fox, Anishinaabe Nation. Derek Fox, Anishinaabe father, lawyer, and avid outdoorsman. He is from the Bearskin Lake First Nation in the Treaty 9 territory. As a youth, he found strength and comfort on the outdoor hockey rink, and his love of hockey brought him many achievements, namely being a first-round draft choice in the Ontario Hockey League by the Sioux Greyhounds at age 16. He was also given opportunities to play for Ted Nolan and with First Nations hockey star Jonathan Chichu on the international stage. Derek enjoyed a successful career in major junior and semi-pro hockey, and eventually combined his love of the sport with his desire to pursue an education by playing hockey at university. Soon after he was blessed with his first son, he received a degree in political science and economics from the University of Manitoba. After the birth of the second son, Derek decided to pursue a career in law and completed his Juris Doctorate law degree at the University of Manitoba. He was called the Ontario Bar in 2014, and he practiced in the areas of civil litigation with a focus on Aboriginal and corporate commercial law. He has a passion for his people, for his territory, and for instilling a love of culture, sport, and education in Anishinaabe youth. He encourages young people to be focused and determined so that they can reach the highest levels of education possible. In August of 2015, he was elected to be one of 3 Deputy Grand Chiefs of the Anishinaabe Alaskan Nation Executive. He is currently a member in good standing with the Law Society of Canada, and also carries the portfolios of education, economic development, broadband environment, and sports and recreation. Please join me in welcoming our guest speaker this evening, Deputy Grand Chief Derek Fox.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge our elder for the beautiful drum song. I'd like to acknowledge Justice Shaw. He was our captain for the Better Cup hockey team. And I'm missing lawyer hockey tonight. because of it. Speech. Justice Newton, I'd also like to acknowledge, also a good friend of mine. I'd also like to acknowledge Darby Sterrick, who's also a good friend of mine. Wade, Darby. She's going to be the assistant to Mr. Don Resnack, who's our new MP. And of course, I got some other friends in the crowd here who I'd like to acknowledge, but first I'd like to say thank you for having me here tonight. I'm here to talk about truth and reconciliation, which is, when I first started talking about it, it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, given my upbringing. But as the days went on and the years went on, things got easier, talking about my background, talking about who I am. So, in saying that, I just want to give a brief background on who I am. I'm from Greskin Lake First Nation, as was said in my biography. I'm also from Treaty 3, Shoal Lake First Nation. It's near Kenora. I got two boys, aged 9 and 11. Daryl and Kyron are their names. Both beautiful boys, both good hockey players, both good students. I like to say handsome like their dad. Their mom would disagree. Anyway, in this speech tonight, I want to talk a bit about, when I talk about truth and reconciliation, I want to talk about truth first. And truth for me is, it's in reference to the residential school legacy. And for myself, I had to grow up with two parents who went to residential schools. My dad went to Shinnecock, which was one of the worst residential schools in Canada. His story was, he grew up in Greskin Lake, which is 2 hours north of here by plane. And he was about 5 years old. He was like any kid in the north. He was hunting partridge with a rock full of pockets. His pockets were full of rocks, and he had a slingshot. And what he was doing at that time was he was hunting partridge. He was probably about 5 or 6 years old, and he was just hunting partridge. And what he told me was he enjoyed hunting partridge for his mom, because his mom was happy that he could hunt. So it made him proud to bring home his kill. So this particular day, he was walking around with a slingshot. He heard a plane coming. So he ran down to the dock. And what he said was he saw a whole bunch of people at the dock, lots of commotion. And when he went up there, he was snatched up by, he said, a big white guy in the plane. And at that point, he was flown off to, I think it was Sulico. And from Sulico, I think he took a train to Sault Ste. Marie. And he would be in Sault Ste. Marie from the age of 5 to about the age of 12 or 13. So he spent a good 10 years there. The only time he ever talked about his childhood was when he was drinking. And it came out in my teen years. He'd be drinking, he'd calm me down. He was a bad drunk. He started talking about his experiences. He talked about the abuses. He talked about being sexually abused by priests and kids, older kids, adults, physically abused, mentally abused, verbally. He had lost his entire way of life, his language, couldn't speak anymore. You know, that was his upbringing from the age of 5 to about 15. He was, I don't know, I don't know how he survived it, but he did. And you know, now that I'm older, he shares a lot of those stories with me, not being drunk. After he was done residential school, he returned home. My grandpa, a guy named John Fox, took him out to the land for 2 years. We have a land called the Saskatchewan River. It's north of Erskine Lake. We still go there. It's the most beautiful place you'll ever see. You know, it's never-ending rivers, snake-shaped rivers, hunting, fishing, trapping. You know, it's our entire way of life. It's all we know. And this is where my grandpa would take him to learn his language, his culture, and teach him, reteach him on who he was, who he is. So, you know, that was my dad's upbringing. He was abused in every way possible. And my mom went to school in Kenora. She went to Cecilia Jeffrey. And same thing, she was abused, taken from her home. Similar story. You know, the same kind of story you hear about, read about in the newspapers. So those were my parents. That's what they went through. And my grandparents had to endure losing their kids. You know, losing the kids at the age of 5 to 15, I think it was, about a good 10 years. And, you know, thinking of my boys, I can't imagine ever anybody taking my kids away from me. So, you know, when you put that into perspective, I don't know how they survived. So anyway, they became parents. They had me and my siblings. I left home when I was 5. I left Erskine Lake when I was 5 years old. And in that time, we had moved to Thunder Bay. And my dad, he was a bad drunk, he was abusive. And unfortunately, my mom had to bear the brunt of that. And eventually my father took off, and my mom was left to raise us. I have 4 siblings. One passed away. But in those years, grade 1 to grade 6, roughly, I grew up in a party house. You know, grew up in a home with alcoholism. I could recall not wanting to go home. I could recall sleeping in a shed in the wintertime. Hiding on my bed. Like it was, now that I look back, it was a tough childhood. But in that time, I became good at other things. I I became good at reading, writing, hockey. School was my escape. It was how I got away. It was, I had a wild imagination. And I got extremely good at writing. I wrote crazy stories, dreamed of things, and all I did was write. Read everything I could. I was a good student. There were some mornings where I always tell this story, and I remember it clearly as people passed out all over the floor of my house, empty beer bottles, cigarettes, and I still hate that smell of raw booze and cigarettes. But I remember walking around picking people's pockets for money so that I could buy myself lunch, pizza and hot dogs, your $2 pizza day. But I don't know how many teachers we have here. How many do we have? Quite a few. My teachers were the saving grace for me. I had amazing teachers. I don't know if they knew that I was having a tough childhood, but a lot of them took care of me. They really looked out for me. So in a way, it was kind of a saving grace. It was something in disguise, maybe, but that's what I grew up with, because what I believe is the residential school legacy is so powerful. My parents were just bad parents because they didn't have the ability to be good parents. It wasn't in them. They didn't have the capacity. And I've forgiven them. I've forgiven them for the abuses that my siblings and I had to endure. It took me a long time to become someone who didn't drink anymore. Because I heard Phil Fontaine say on TV last week during the Truth and Reconciliation, he said I was a bad drunk. His kids came up them. And I'm the same way. I'm a bad drunk. I don't drink. I wouldn't be a deputy grand chief if I still drank. Justice Shaw could probably attest to this. Because I've been with him on hockey tournaments. I didn't do anything bad, but he's had some funny stories to share. But my point being, it in a way it made me a better person. And we talked about truth and reconciliation, and I could spit out these facts. You guys read about them all the time. The 94 recommendations. You read about the horror stories, people being shocked in electric chairs. But I wanted you to hear from someone who's a lawyer, who's from Thunder Bay, who grew up at Thunder Bay. And I want you to hear from someone who's passionate about reconciliation. And that's my next point, is reconciliation. How do we get to reconciliation? How do we reconcile our differences? How do we right the wrongs? And my belief is what I run on, like my mandate in my leadership is to look at our kids, my kids. What am I going to leave my kids 25 years from now? What am I going to leave my kids 50 years from now? My grandkids. And I don't think of it as First Nations children only, I think of it as First Nations and non-First Nations. What's Thunder Bay gonna look like in 25 years? So that's my goal for reconciliation, is better relationships. To ensure that our people are getting along, the people of Thunder Bay are getting along, you know? I talk about reconciliation, and one thing that comes to mind from Thunder Bay is racism. You know, it's I think it has a huge part in suicides of our young people, First Nations young people. I think it has a huge part in crimes. And you know, for myself, growing up in Thunder Bay, David Blakey there was reading my bio, and I grew up playing hockey, and I got very good at it. I played at a high level, AAA, and Major Junior. You know, got to go to NHL camps. I got to do all those things. I got really good at hockey. But in all that time, I experienced the racism of being an Indian hockey player. And it wasn't just in Thunder Bay, but it was everywhere that I went. And I think about it today. I'm 34 years old now. And everywhere I go, I have that mindset that, you know, if I go into a room full of non-native people, I think I'm going to be racist. If someone saying something about that Indian over there. And I think that's a form of post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think that has a role to play in a lot of our young people, a lot of our First Nations people. And I think it has a huge negative effect on them within the city, within this country. And you know, that's part of reconciliation, is ensuring that we get rid of that. And I don't know if we'll ever totally get rid of it, but I do believe that it can get better. I do believe it's better. You know, I'm here now, and I'm a practicing lawyer, having overcome things in life that you know, that I don't feel sorry for myself. But in that time, I look back on my life, and I know that I've hurt a lot of people. I hurt a lot of people when I was drinking. I hurt a lot of people just with my anger when I wasn't drinking. You know, being a residential school survivor. I call myself a survivor because what people don't get is that it's not just the people that went to these schools, it's their kids too. As I've described, it's an intergenerational effect. And that's the reason that I stopped drinking and became a good parent, because I wanted the residential school legacy to stop at me. I didn't want that to pass over to my sons. But unfortunately, a lot of our people haven't been able to do that. So if you're a teacher, you're going to be teaching a lot of kids, my son's age, grades 1 to grade 6. We're growing up with parents who are dealing with this residential school legacy, who haven't been able to overcome that. We're still drinking, we're still abusive towards their partners, towards their kids. So you're going to see a lot of these kids. You see them now. You see them in foster care. You see them in child and family services. My dad's got 10 kids right now, the same age as my sons, who've grown up with parents who abused them, hurt them. And I know in my heart, I believe that those parents are a product of the residential school legacy. I know that in my heart. That's how powerful it is. I think about my community of Bearskin Lake. I think about the power of the residential school legacy. My home community is a very strong Christian base. And I got no disrespect towards religions. I respect all religions. But my community is so faithful to Christianity that they tell me that drumming is bad, that dancing in a circle, that powwow is bad. They tell me that I have kids and I'm not married and that's bad. You know, that's the effects of the residential school legacy. Christianity is their faith. And that's no disrespect to them, but that's just what they were taught in schools. And it's very, very powerful. And I know that we got a lot of work to do. And I know as teachers, we have a lot of work to do. I know as lawyers, which is my next point. Reconciliation through the law. You know, I got two judges here, and I know that a lot's going to be done in the courts, with the criminal courts. And a lot of those people going through the courts are a product of the residential school legacy. A lot of them drink, get in fights, hurt each other, lateral violence. And that's not an excuse. That's never an excuse. But I think that as far as the courts are concerned, you've got to be a bit of sensitivity towards these people that can't get out of that cycle. In our schools, I know that the recommendations talked about curriculums, talking about the residential schools and treaties, which I think is very important. People will say that you can't, our teachers don't want to teach it, they're uncomfortable with teaching it. So I think that we need to find a way to ensure that our young people, both native and non-native, are learning about the true history of our First Nations people. The other thing is, as far as law is concerned, is reconciliation through legislation, the preservation of our languages. So what the residential school did was, it was over 100 years of doing this to our kids, like my father. And the way I like to say it is the language was beaten out of them and this culture. There's over 100 years of that. So my belief is it's going to take another 100 years or more for us to get that back. It's going to take a cooperative effort from both First Nations and non-First Nations, from all Canadians. And what I never understood with our last government, that if you're helping these people, if you're helping your First Nations people, you're going to make a better country. Overall, you're going to make a better country. I never understood why they wouldn't take the time to help them, invest in them, invest in their language, the culture, invest in their education. So I'm optimistic with this new government. A cautious optimism. I'm a realist. I understand politics a little bit. I think our new government made some big promises, big dollars. So I don't expect all of it to be fulfilled, but I hope most of it is. But I think what you're going to see is what I believe with my sons and their generation is you're going to just see a whole new healthy group of leaders. My sons they don't know their dad is a drunk. They don't know their mom is a drunk. They didn't have to wake up pickpocketing drunk people, passed out people. They didn't have to get themselves ready for school. They didn't have to endure any kinds of abuses. They're being taught the language. I teach them how to hunt. I teach them how to fish. But most of all, I teach them good parenting. So what that's going to do is if we have more kids of their generation being taught to be proud of who they are, be proud to be Anishinaabe. When they get older, when they become 25, 30, and they start to become leaders, you're going to see a shift, and you're going to see a better country. That's my belief. So I do believe it starts in the homes. I do believe it starts with our parents. And then it starts in the schools when the kids leave home. That's why we got to start hitting them when they're young, like they did with the residential schools. The government then wasn't dumb. They knew what they were doing. They knew that if you get them when they're in JK, up until they're grade 12, you start taking their language and their culture, their land. Because that's what a nation is, it's land, culture, and language. You take any one of those away, that group of people can't be a nation. And right now we have, I'd say over 40 right now with our First Nations people. I'd say about 100% of them can speak their language fluently. You go under 40, I'd say 90% of them can't speak their language fluently. You talk about our kids, our grandchildren, it's even worse. So when you hear languages being tossed around with reconciliation, that's why. Because our language is an important component of our nation, all our nations. If you can't speak your language, you can't connect with the land. You can't connect with who you are. I just want to tell you a little bit about my relationship with the land. I talked about the Saskatchewan River, which is north of here. We take a float plane from Big Trout Lake and we land on the river. And what we do there is we hunt and we fish. We spend about 10 days there every year, fall time. But our connection to the land is it's more spiritual. My land's been in my family for about 100 years. And my grandparents have passed on. My late brother, who passed away of cancer about 10 years ago, passed on. That was his favorite place to go. And the way we think is that when we go there, we're closer to them than we could ever be. So that's what we mean by spiritual connection. And for myself, I'm obsessed with the land. I'm obsessed with hunting. You'll see me, I'll go north of here, 2 hours down to go hunt moose every second day. I just want to be out there. I'll go nuts in the city. Somebody asked me, don't you go kind of crazy out there when you're by yourself? But no, I go kind of crazy in the city. That's why I leave all the time. So my connection to the land is something that's in my heart. So that's why you'll see a lot of our people, First Nations people, who are so passionate about protecting the land and the resources, so passionate about the language, because they want that land, their culture, and their language. They want that back. So that's I would say it's like sacred to us. So my goals now as a leader, if you don't know a lot about Anishinaabe Nation, we've got 49 First Nations from the Manitoba border to the James Bay coast. We got Muskegee people, Ojibwe, OJEN Cree. We got all kinds of people, young people, elders, all kinds of land bases, river systems. And our job as leaders now is to advocate for them, is to advocate for those three things: the land and culture, and the language. So the reconciliation part comes in. You know, it's going to be through relationships with not just government, but people like yourselves, the teachers, lawyers, and judges. It's going to be a concerted effort. They can get out of the mindset that it's these Indians want things, and get into the mindset of let's make a better Canada. I think that can happen. So that's what I think will happen with reconciliation. I think it's going to be a long process. The truth is just beginning. So that's why I wanted to share my story. It's not to be negative or to share a sob story, but to share a real story of what an intergenerational survivor of the residential school legacy has endured. And my belief is, I truly believe that I lost my older brother to cancer through his stress of what we had to endure as kids. I think he developed that cancer in the system. Because he was older than me, and he took it pretty hard. You know, he tried to act like my bodyguard. He tried to look out for his little brother, but he couldn't. As much as he tried, we were just too young. I think that stress got to him. In his dying days, he apologized for the things happening. And I said to him, it's not your fault. It's what happened. That's life. So I think my belief is that when we got older, he carried that stress, he carried that the pain, the disappointment of a big brother. So, and I think my dad knows that. I think my mom knows that. So I think it's powerful in that sense too, having lost people like that. So, you know, that's the truth. When we say truth and reconciliation, that's truth. That's what we're starting. And when people want to share their stories, just listen, and it makes them feel better. A year ago, I probably wouldn't have been able to stand up here and talk about this. They'll break it down. But over the years, it's gotten, I shouldn't say easier, but I've gotten better at talking about it. So out there is thousands of people across the country. We've got thousands of people across the country who are still struggling with it, still having to deal with this residential school legacy. When you think about it, it wasn't 100 years ago that the last school was closed. The last school was closed in 1996. And the funny thing is, I always went to school there. I went there for hockey tryouts when I was 16 years old in LeBret, Saskatchewan. That was the last school I closed. The guys there, they're my age, 34 years old, went there. I had a big payout when the survivors got paid. So it's new, it's fresh. We've only started talking about it. We've only started talking about the realities. And I think you see the product of our residential school survivors when you read about it in the paper, when you see people on the streets, when you see First Nation people on the streets. So that's why I don't ever judge them. we've got to think about where they were, where they've been, what kind of life they've lived. I think I've lived a life where I was on that line. I was so close to becoming either a criminal, street person, or dying. But I chose to live because I got my two boys. And a lot of those people are not so fortunate. So when you see them, just think about their backgrounds. Think about the residential schools. And don't judge. So, a few more things about reconciliation is I know I'm not supposed to talk about reconciliation through the law, but I think for me, the most important area that's going to be effective for this is education. When I ran for deputy grand chief, I ran on a platform of education. You know, I talked about education in the school setting. I talked about education on the land, and then I talked about a duty of our leaders to educate the public, which is what I'm doing here tonight, to educate you so that you can educate others. And that's how we start building relationships. That's how we start this reconciliation process. We start that discussion. And I have a lot of good friends who are survivors. You know, some famous ones like Walt Canoe. His dad was a survivor. You know, he was a heavy drinker, a bad drunk too. I lived with him at one point in Winnipeg when I went to law school there. Both drinking, and both got in a fight. He stopped drinking after that. And he was telling me, I saw him last week, he was telling me that one day, you want to hear a scary thought, one day our language could be gone. We could wake up, our language would be gone. So, education for me is where I'm going to start. As the Deputy Grand Chief of the National Education, I hold that education portfolio, and what I'm going to be advocating for, what I've told my leadership, my chiefs, and my people, is that language for me is at the top of my agenda. Language in the urban settings in Thunder Bay, Timmins. Because what's happening is a lot of our people are leaving home to get an education or jobs. They want to have a life too. They want to get good jobs. They want to take care of their kids. They want to go on trips. They want to live like everybody else. They want to have the nice vehicle, the nice house. And they want that. So they have to leave home. But in doing that, they're sacrificing who they are. They're sacrificing their languages. They're sacrificing the ability to hunt and live off the land. So for me, it's like, well, you know, we need language institutes in our cities and urban settings. Our people need to have that ability to learn and retain that language. So that's one of my top things. In my term, I'm going to continue to educate the public by sharing my story. I'm going to continue to build relationships, break that racism. And I think that by me doing it, there's others that will follow, others that are already doing it. And that's just good leadership. And I'm hopeful, very hopeful for this new government. So I hope I didn't make anybody cry tonight. But I just felt it important to share that. You know, I'm a lawyer now. Passed the bar exam. How many are writing the bar exam? Just one? Just one lawyer here? Just one's going to be a lawyer? I'm excited. I do believe in this school and their importance, the fact that they stress the importance on Aboriginal law. You know, it's, I think Aboriginal law is going to be very important in the future. When you think about land claims, if you're going to be a lawyer, you just think about the involvement you have in Aboriginal law. You were here last week with the Ring of Fire, talking about the Ring of Fire, and that's going to be very important. My personal opinion on that is I don't think the Ring of Fire is anywhere near being developed, but it's going to happen eventually, and it's going to create jobs and so on. So you're going to run into First Nations people who want to make sure that their lands are safe, that their people are safe, they have clean drinking water. You know, it's I could sit here and talk all night about reconciliation and recommendations, you know, the boil water, but it's all that. But mostly, I just want to I want to thank the law school for having me here, and I look forward to the first set of graduates this year. I look forward to working with you. I think that our First Nations lawyers and lawyers in this area are going to do great things. So I just want to once again thank you for having me here, and I look forward to announcing our dean pretty soon. So once again, be good. Thank you.
Thoughts for those important and moving work about the past and about the future. We do have time for questions from the audience. And certainly invite questions. And if you have a question, it's probably best if you're able to go to the mic, or maybe we can bring the mic to you. We'll open the floor for questions. Yes, are you ready?
It's nice to hear you talk about Derek and your parents. I am a survivor of Shimon Cobra. I was there. And I never really bothered with the system. For a long time, I used to think nothing happened to me. And then one time I went to Saskatoon and I was teaching these students that didn't know anything about residential school, and they didn't realize the effects it had on their growth. And that's when it hit me, when I was telling those young people what residential school did to us. That's when it came down on me. Everything that happened to me, just come flooding up. I didn't know, I shelved it in the back of my mind, I guess. And I am also, my mother was a residential school product, and she had a rough time raising us. And then I became a residential school product, and I was a sad parent. And the same thing, how his father was picked up. We were on our way to the trap line, and then the plane had landed there. And then that person I was picking up students, the agent, I guess, said there was one person that didn't show up to fill up the plane. That's how I got taken out. And we were just on our way back to the trap line. And that's how I ended up in the residential school. I grew up in a trap line. I was quite old when I moved into the community. And I went to Shimoa. I tried to find good memories so I can move on. And I think when I went back to my tradition, that's what helped me to move on, to forgive and to move on. Like, I grew up in a trap line. My home was good. I had strong parents, grandparents, but it changed when we moved to the community. But we had a good base in the trap line. So I'm always proud to say that I have from a spectrum to the western end of the spectrum. I managed to struggle through, to come from a trap line, not knowing how to speak in English, becoming a teacher, finishing up your Western system, getting enough degrees so I can go back and teach the children. I was a very good teacher. I knew that. But the thing was, I was not a well-being. I wasn't well. And that's what we have today. We need to have well-being teachers to teach our children so that we can build a strong society like Derek said. My children are good. They go to school. They do things. Those are the kind of people we want while they're growing up, but we do not have that. If you could just imagine some of the communities well, I teach through long distance education. This is my colleague here. We look after how many communities? 28 communities. So when we teach the years and 28 communities, so I have a very large passion. But what I want to say is, we need to have a system where we look at all four aspects of a being. Does everybody know those aspects? Those four aspects, right? We need to look at those. Today, the way I see education system, it has three aspects. It only looks after three aspects. And we forget that last part. I'm talking about the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual being. We do not have the spiritual aspect in our school system. We have religion, but that's not what I'm talking about. We need to have that inner force to help our children understand. That is how they example of what I mean. When my grandfather saw my dad wasn't being a good father, my kind, quiet, gentle grandpa said to my dad, I want you to go home. Go find yourself. And when you're ready to come home, come back. So he left in November. He came back in April. He was a changed man. He went to the land. He looked at all four aspects of his life. He made that connection in all being to the land. And the reason why I bring it up here is because this is the law, this is the education, and then I'm getting, how do you say it? I am getting two things with one stone. So that's why I'm saying this. Because I think we need to start thinking if we want to. Whenever I see my people on the street, they lost their footing with the land. And we look down on them, I even do that. We need to look at those people. They have truth. They have truth. They are basically the product of the residential school. The government, the churches decided, let's assimilate these people. They're not our kind of people. Let's make them our kind of people. And all they did was destroy the three things, which is why it says cultural genocide, which is killing culture, language, parenting. The core beings, the core things of a group, those were destroyed. But we are resilient. There are some of us that are strong. I always say thank you to the Trustline teachings, because that's what's keeping me going. Now I went back to my land. I went back to teaching that I had medicine wheel teachings, lodge teachings, and these are the things that make me strong. I am proud to say I have been in education for 35 years, from kindergarten to university. I have taught in all levels of education. So, coming from a trot line, not being able to speak English at age 15, being sent out to the residential school, that's the hardest journey I have to live with. So today, I walk with 7 teachings. I fall, I get up again. And this is what we need for reconciliation, is to look at how we can touch on the 7 teachings that we all need to survive. And we need to pass that on to our children. It's our children that are destroyed, that are going to be destroyed if we do not have reconciliation. And we need to somehow connect to the land. What I always say is when I was translating, interpreting at a court hearing, one of my cousins had murdered another cousin. And when that judge talked to me and said, "So what do you think we should do?" And I said, "I think they should go back to the land. I think you should go build us a home in the land, so where we can move with people that going to get into trouble like this. Because that's where we will understand ourselves. Not in jail, that's a cage, we're just like animals there. If we sit in a cage, we don't learn anything. So, and it's hard, and it's also a good time for us to work together, to make sure we agree with some things. We have different cultures, we have different beliefs. There are some things that we can agree on, to start communicating, to start talking. Let's look at racism. I'm a racist too, when I want to be. So is everybody. So let's deal with it. Why does it exist? We're all the same. We breathe the same air and everything. So I feel that I'm taking too much of your time, Derek. Sorry. Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
I have a question about, I'm also an educator, and so how can we as educators bring reconciliation into the classroom? Like, what are some kind of practical things we can do?
That's a good question. Okay.
Yesterday I was on the mountain for the Remembrance Day ceremony, and there was a group of grade 7s from my program Oregon, and they sang the O Canada in Ojibwe. So I think, when I know there's a lot of Hammersville students here, when I was in Hammersville, they sang it in French one day, or like Agricola one day, English one day, so we could do a day in Ojibwe. And then teach the students, teach the words. That's just one small example. Back to our
Good answer. Just a real quick answer. I think teachers should have confidence in themselves to be able to deliver those kinds of teachings. I think a lot of the criticisms that we deal with is that non-native teachers are uncomfortable with teaching First Nations issues, residential school issues. Because you got to be careful when it comes to residential schools. You're opening up wounds. You're hitting a dark area, and it's a very touchy subject. So I would just say to educators that do it correctly, do it with confidence, but be open to your First Nation students especially. Yeah.
I was initially going to ask a question, but comments on me. So I've been a teacher really at public school board for 17 years. Right now I'm currently a French teacher at Chat. And this year, currently as we speak, I'm taking a new studies course offered through the school board. Airlines is the instructor at the school. Fantastic instructor. And you touched on that very issue that a lot of us have already mentioned and discussed as teachers in this course, that speaking to new issues is out of our comfort zone. And from my perspective, I always find it obviously to welcome guests into the classroom, people who can speak to those issues, because beyond the scope of what I'm you have those experiences come into the school to share those experiences?
I think I talked about the recommendations. They touch on all those, sensitivity training to teachers and even like the law societies. They're all in those 94 recommendations. So the recommendations are good, but until they're actually put into practice, I don't blame the teachers who don't have that mandate yet to actually administer that in their classrooms. But I admire them for trying, the ones who try. But Justin Trudeau says he's going to implement all 94, so we'll see.
I just wanted to invite your comments on the legal notion of informed consent when it comes to the Ring of Fire and people in communities giving their permission for something to happen. Being a citizen of Sioux Lobby is very different than being a citizen of Bear Sing Lake in terms of the relationship to the land. So how do we, can you just give us some interpretations from your knowledge of being a member of the community to being in law school as to how we could educate both parties, high school students, to what informed consent is?
What it means? What it means?
Yes. How do we respect the goal of achieving that so that if the Ring of Fire goes forward, that individuals in their Aboriginal communities feel that they have a proper voice, that they understand what's going on, that they can deal with it. I mean, as Ruby and I, we talked about this too, and her question related to the issue of well, you're trying to heal and you're trying to achieve at the same time, and you have that difficulty of making those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, I was here last week, as I said earlier, taking in all the Ring of Fire discussion, and I didn't see any First Nations people on the panel, so I think we got Chief Annabelle. I thought it was important that they, no disrespect to the law school, but I thought they could have had a couple more with respect to people who could voice an opinion on the land, in their relationship, and especially educated people. And I think as far as informed consent is concerned, it's basically asking the people for permission to go ahead with any kind of development. It's not just the people of the community, it's the people of the travel lines, it's the people of the traditional lands, and all the surrounding areas. And my criticism of the Ring of Fire is that our people are not ready for it. Our people are dealing with the social problems from the residential schools and the social issues. There's no capacity to host something like the Ring of Fire. So informed consent is good, it's important. And we need to address the community needs. We need to talk to the community. You think of this Cantica, who's got a 22-year, whatever, 23-year boil water advisory. The last thing on their mind right now is mining. When their kids are getting sores and taking baths in dirty water, can't drink the water. We got places with high suicide rates. It's mining and development is the last thing on their mind right now. So I think, regardless, we're years and years away from that. But when that time comes, informed consent is extremely, extremely important. Where you run into things like the KI Latinx issue, when Chief of Council went to jail for defending their lands. For myself, as a leader, I'm given a mandate to lobby and advocate according to the direction I'm given by my chiefs. But for me personally, in my traditional lands that I just talked about in my speech, I wouldn't want any kind of mining there, and I probably lay down my life to defend it. And I think there's a lot of people like that out there. So it's going to be a lot of work as far as development is concerned. It's going to be a lot of discussions, and informed consent is where it starts. So it's important.
could put so much energy and discussion into Ring of Fire, we could just put that same amount of energy into getting clean water for another issue.
Division or other questions? Perhaps we'll bring this evening, this important evening, to a close. I'd like to thank Deputy Chief Fox again. And all of you in the audience for being here and for your questions and comments. We move forward together. I'll call on Elder Percy for closing prayer.
And it's really, really interesting because this journey isn't over tonight because there's another session in the morning tomorrow for teachers. And so one of the things that we do, we usually do a closing and then we do the traveling song. Traveling song would close it down totally, and then we'd have to start over again at the other place. And the journey is exactly the same thing. And so there will be people talking about this at the courthouse in Fort William or in the south end of town. And so what I'm going to do is use a song that came to us from the western door when people were taking the time to pick up their responsibilities and to do things in a good way. And it's called the Life-Giving Song. And one of our ancient teachings is the Creator gave every one of us a gift for when we came here, when the seeds were planted. And the thing is that one of the biggest responsibilities we have is to find out what that gift is and to use it on the best you can on behalf of the community and the people that you're walking your journey with. So it's called the Life-Giving Song. It's sung in ceremonies, sweat lodges. It's sung when people are pulling on the tree of life to pick up their responsibilities as they go forward as warriors and to make their journey. So this is for you, the people that are walking the path, listening to the stories, picking up the experience, to honor you on the journey that you're taking. It is a life-giving song. Yahweh, 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 And as long as we do so, and we talk to each other, share our voice, share our spirit, the winds will blow, the grass will grow, there will be no hill too high, no valley too low, to stop the people. Thanks for being three witches.